Right, we go. All right, so what I wanted to do was talk briefly about the upgrade operating system issue for Macs. If you're currently, I've been basically talking for the last year or more about this problem with the mail bug in Catalina, which has continued in Big Sur, which has basically prevented me from upgrading from Mojave because I don't want to risk losing email at random. And as a result of that, I'm now in a situation where I'm basically managing 3 computers, one running Mojave, one running Catalina, and one running Big Sur, and juggling them. And it's getting increasingly annoying. So I'm attempting to find a solution which works for me. So what I have done so far, just remove the spotlight from that, and then go to share my screen here. So we're now looking at my other computer. I want to go across to this piece of software. I'm trying out an email program called Postbox. Now, Postbox is a commercial third-party email application. I think it was a one-off purchase cost of something in the ballpark of $30 US. It wasn't horrendously expensive. And I'm intending, this is my best candidate I found so far, which covers enough features to work for everybody, no matter where your email is hosted. So I've got accounts on Gmail, Outlook, I still have a working POP account, and I've got my IMAP accounts, which aren't Gmail. So it works on all of them. I've confirmed. The Outlook account, it's not actually using the Microsoft Exchange protocol, it's using the IMAP protocol. So that might vary a little bit, but it works with outlook.com or outlook.co.nz. User interface wise, it's a little bit different layout, but for the most part, the layout is similar. If I find a discussion, well, there's a recent email discussion, for example, so you can see it has a sort of a mail-like conversation view. So most of the features seem to be pretty similar. And what I've been doing reasonably for a while recently is I'm running them both at the same time. So I've got mail coming into both email programs simultaneously. So I can just get a feel for it. I haven't actually started writing emails with it yet, so I don't have a feel for that. But that is a good candidate that I found, which covers most use cases. There are many other options. The main one, if you have a Gmail account, is simply to use the web interface. So use the web Gmail interface to deal with your email, and don't use Apple Mail. At least for the purpose to avoid the bug in Apple Mail, which is specifically moving messages between mailboxes on online mail accounts. So if you have an IMAP account, an Exchange account, or something like that, you have a message sitting in your inbox, you move it to a different mailbox, it might delete it, a random chance. And that includes, this message has been classified automatically by your mail software as junk. No, it wasn't. I want to put it back again. Whoops, deleted, gone forever, everywhere, nowhere to get it back again. This is the reason I don't want to use mail to do any email in later versions of macOS and Mojave.
Is that also the same, like, because I'm in the same boat as you, if I move a message on my iPhone?
No.
Apple, that's only on
it's only if you use the Mac version of Apple Mail. You can move messages on the iPhone safely, I think. I haven't heard any reports of that. If you're running more than one email software, you can move the messages on a different email program and they'll move correctly on Mail. The problem is just using Mail to move the messages.
Okay, so any iOS device is basically iPhone.
Yeah,
okay.
And it appears the problem is something like it does, in order to do a move, it's got to copy the message from one mailbox to another, and then it deletes the original, and sometimes the copy doesn't work. So you end up with a partial message which then vanishes and the original gets deleted and it's gone. So if it appears that problem does not affect on my Mac folders and it doesn't affect POP accounts. So if you're using a POP account, it's probably okay to run Catalina Mail. If you're using an IMAP account, then if you're only moving messages to file them and on my Mac folders as opposed to Gmail folders, for example, or anything on the server, then it might be safe as well. So with that in mind, that's sort of the situation right now. There are other email clients that I haven't looked at yet. There are potentially other candidates. Thunderbird, for example, is one option. Thunderbird is actually, Postbox is actually based on Thunderbird. Postbox is commercial, Thunderbolt is open source. So if Thunderbird is effectively free, Postbox has a much nicer user interface. So that's the reason I went with that. I'd actually bought it a few years ago, so I just paid for it again to bring it up to date.
Yeah, because I'm 95 or 98% my usage with my mail, my Gmail, normally on my phone, on my iPad.
Yeah, that's hopefully not a problem. I haven't heard of it as a problem. Okay, so in terms of timeline, we're in March now. Mojave is basically got 6 months-ish to go for security updates. So about September is when it will finish security updates for good, apart from minor background updates. So it's a good idea to be planning now, but not urgently thinking about, I need to move tomorrow or anything. It's just over the next few months, you need to be considering if you're running a Mac which is new enough to be able to run Mojave, anything newer than Mojave, you might want to consider upgrading something so you can keep getting security updates. This is where my partially written magazine article is actually useful. So I got as far as writing the first page. Now I don't know how visible that is. If I zoom a bit, then no, it doesn't really work. I need to make the window wider. Let's make the window wider. That's better. Okay, here is a table I prepared earlier, which is the first page of my article. Basically, I've written and the rest of it I've got stuck on. I've listed all the recent operating system versions just so you get an idea of the timeline and what their number was, what their name was, the range of Mac models that support them so you can see the pattern. And the article didn't quite flow after this point, so I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to structure the rest of it. But anyway, the key point here is that if you have a Mac currently running Mojave, it must be somewhere between a 2010 and 2019 model, because anything older than that can't run Mojave. Anything newer than that can't run, only runs Catalina or later. The earlier models are a bit complicated because there's only one model, in fact, that is from 2010 that runs Mojave, which is the very large Mac Pro, the desktop tower machine, the monster. All the other models that run Mojave are 2012 or later. So if you have a 2011 Mac, for example, you can't even run Mojave for most part. So if you had, for example, a 2012 Mac that's able to run Catalina, the question is, should you upgrade that computer to Catalina? Or should you go straight to Big Sur if your machine is new enough? You'll notice on that bottom line of that table, to run Big Sur, you need at least a mid-2013 Mac, and there are some models from 2013 that don't run Big Sur, specifically iMacs, and also early 2013 MacBook Pros. So if you have a 2013 iMac, it can't run Big Sur. It can only run Catalina. If you have a 2012 Mac, it can run, all the 2012 Macs will only run Catalina and not run Big Sur. So at some point, if you're in that situation, one of those model years, you're going to run out of upgrades anyway soon. So the question is it worth bothering to upgrade from Mojave to something newer? My gut feeling is that basically Catalina has got to a point where Apple's managed to fix most of the egregious problems with it, apart from the mail bug. It's not perfect, but it's reasonable. I've got it running on my newer MacBook Pro, and it's okay, apart from the mail issue, which I've avoided completely by not running mail on this computer. However, it appears that on average, Big Sur is already better than Catalina in terms of stability and so forth. So if you are in a situation where you can choose to upgrade to either Catalina or Big Sur, I recommend you go with Big Sur. Apart from anything else, if Apple does fix this mail bug, they're not going to fix it on Catalina unless they're very generous. They'll only fix it on the latest operating system. So Catalina might never get this mail bug fixed. We don't know that yet.
Yeah, the option for me is basically if I upgrade to Big Sur, I just don't open email and
yeah. Well, you've got a Gmail account anyway, so you can just use the web interface if you need to. So yeah.
But 90%, as I said, 98% of my activity now, my laptop's hardly ever opens now. Every time I use it, it's when I'm doing membership stuff now.
Yep. So in your case, you got a 2015.
15,
Yeah, so you'll find
Me and
Margaret. Yeah.
both got the
Yeah.
same computer.
My 2013 model is the oldest supported model for Big Sur, one of them. So I could upgrade this one, but right now I really don't want to. I'd rather keep this machine running Mojave. I've got this one running Catalina. I've got a M1 MacBook Air running Big Sur. I've got a clone of this machine running on Big Sur as well, so I can test things, but I haven't done much with that
So
yet.
even if I did that, what I could do is even just remove the mail program from my dock, so then it doesn't actually prompt me to actually use the mail program on that. So that could be as I said, most of the time I'm on my phone, and that's where I'm doing my mail all the time.
Yep. Now, as far as Big Sur goes, Apple is the release of the next minor update, which will be version 11.3, is imminent. It might happen this week. If not this week, then next week. One of the problems with Big Sur, which I highlighted in my article last month, is the whopping great huge size for just installing it and for doing software updates. Big Sur was supposed to improve the speed of installing software updates. It's actually a lot worse than older versions. Every single minor update has been about 3 gigabytes and has taken 3/4 of an hour to install on a fast Mac with a solid state drive and tying up your computer the whole time. So it is irritatingly, and like there's been like 3 very small one thing fixed updates in a row, and each of those updates have taken significant amount of time to install. So it's a nuisance. I don't know if Apple can improve that because it's a side effect of the way that they're actually protecting the operating system. Once you're actually running Big Sur, installing the next minor update, it's a 3-ish gigabyte download, and it takes, which isn't a problem in itself for most people these days, but the installation time, it does a reasonably long preparing stage, which you can keep using your computer, and then it needs to restart the computer, and it sits there for a good half an hour or longer sometimes doing the, I'm just going to go around and do all this stuff, and you can't use your computer until that's finished. And if they're releasing new updates every 3 weeks, that gets very irritating very quickly.
So perhaps a bit of a delay in maybe to leapfrog that.
Yeah, well, at least waiting until 11.3 comes out, if nothing else.
Also the business of or Apple stuff ought to be able to get pretty quickly for its own.
Yes, that's only an issue if you're buying a new Mac running an Apple Silicon processor. If you're talking about the M1 stuff.
I'm already finding that trying to get all this updating to 64-bit ahead of time, like I ran into Microsoft where I've got the code download, pay for it, can't run it because I've got to get the hardware.
Yeah. So just to yeah, well, basically you with older software, you've got, if you're still running Mojave earlier, you've got the 32-bit compatibility problem to deal with, because that's basically major thing that dropped in Catalina was all old 32-bit applications stopped working. No, so basically the process for updating software is, where possible, install updates before you upgrade the operating system. Where that's not possible, you upgrade anyway and then install the software that you can run after you've upgraded. That's my usual arrangement. I do it that way as well. So I tend to keep most of my applications I use regularly up to date. So if I'm now in a situation where I've got about 5 applications where I can't run the current version on Mojave anymore because it requires at least Catalina. Some require Big Sur. So this is why I'm having to juggle multiple computers sometimes to deal with several versions of things. I want to be running Big Sur as soon as I can. I just haven't got the time to dedicate to actually getting everything in the right state. And in my case in particular, there's another problem. VMware Fusion, which I use to run virtual machines in Big Sur, has changed to using Apple's hypervisor for running virtual machines rather than VMware's own one, and it's broken some stuff. So I can't run virtual machines reliably under Big Sur. I have to be running Catalina or Aurelia. So this means I'm sort of still, even if I solve the mail problem, I've still got a total deadlock. I can't run Big Sur until I'm sure that's working properly. And M1 Macs can't run them at all because you can't run Intel virtual machines on Apple Silicon. So I'm going to have to keep a working Intel Mac, which is going to be this one, And right now it has to say on Catalina because I can't run Big Sur because of that piece of software. So even if I manage to simplify things by getting my main computer onto Big Sur, it's not going to be the one I bought for the intended purpose of running the latest operating system. It's going to have to be a different one. So you can understand I've been getting increasingly frustrated for the last 6 months or longer with there is no solution to this. It's just things are going haywire with Apple software updates and compatibility problems. So yes, and as a side effect of this and a bunch of other things, I'm finding that just trying to write my article for the magazine, as evidenced by the delays in the last couple of months, has been getting increasingly difficult. And I'm actually suffering from writer's block so badly that I just can't even make any progress on it. So just so everybody here knows, I'm going to have to take a break from WelMac for at least a couple of months so I can get other projects out of the way. So I'm not going to be writing my magazine article, and I'm not going to be presenting at meetings as much as possible. Because if I can take those two things out, that takes a lot of brain power out of action. I can think about other stuff, which I've got unfinished projects that people are supposed to be paying me for that I haven't started on and things like that. So yeah, I'm not going away, but I'm just going to have a break to try and organize things better. Anyway, what's that? Message from Matt to see if that's urgent. That's all right, nothing urgent. Yeah, so the gist of it is that if you can at least start thinking about if you don't want to risk using Apple Mail, finding an alternative, and Postbox is a possibility, but not necessarily the only one, and it's certainly not the cheapest option. If you still need to investigate 32-bit software, I still recommend Go64, which I'd used in the past. It gives you basically finds, including deeply hidden bits of 32-bit software that you may not be aware of on your computer, which will then not work on Catalina or later. As always, the process of upgrading is vitally important. You do a backup before you upgrade anything. Especially as Big Sur prior to one of the more recent updates could leave your computer in an unusable state if you didn't have enough disk space, and it didn't tell you about that until in advance. So they've now fixed that problem, so it just won't install instead. So yeah, little problems like that just really send me. Yes, so basically that's the sort of the thinking. I'm trying to make sure that I'm in a position where I can be running Big Sur within the next 3 months or so for my main system, by which time Apple will release the first pre-release of the following version. So I'll then have to learn about that one instead. So it's a never-ending battle. Yeah.
Just as an example, David, thanks to Go64, I realised that I think it's the player.
I know that's a misleading. That's a false. Yeah, that's a false clue. Go64 will highlight some Apple applications that are still 32-bit on Mojave, but they were updated to 64-bit on Catalina. So, for example, DVD player is still a 32-bit application on Mojave, but it is actually a 64-bit application on Catalina, so it will keep working. However, iDVD, which is part of the old iLife suite, is long gone. Yeah, and iPhoto is another one that won't work. So you need to be using Photos.
But what I mean is that you can't see all your applications in your application.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, they're hiding in funny places. Yep. 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 Let me just go here and I'll run Go64 just so you can see what it looks like. No, yeah, I'll worry about it later. There's a software update for it, but I just want to check it.
What's the orange and yellow triangle with an exclamation mark in it that's put there amongst the 32-bit?
Like that one?
Yeah, what does it mean? It means you've got to attend to it, but it doesn't say what's the matter.
Down the bottom it does. App is 64-bit except for Adobe Air Framework. So it's a warning that it's not entirely 64-bit. In this case. So that one, Adobe Air Framework, is not. That one, Adobe Air Uninstaller.app, is mostly 64-bit, apart from Adobe Air itself. So the uninstaller is the only problem in that case. And the one below it, Aperture, is definitely not It's got one component inside it that's not 64-bit, so most of it is, but it doesn't work anyway in Catalina unless you use a third-party workaround. Yeah, better touch tool. So you can see I've got quite a few there. All the ones that are not 64 is all it's listing here. So I've got various bits of carbon. I've got vast amounts of software on here. And one of the things I was doing as part of setting up this computer is I wasn't copying all my software across. I was starting again with what I was actually using because I've accumulated years and years and years of stuff on this computer. So I'm just cutting that down a bit as I go and only taking the things I think I need. So there's a lot of this old stuff which just won't end up on the new computer anyway. But well, I say new, I've had it for 1.5 years now and I still haven't used it fully. It's a bit ridiculous. Apple's this big. But it's got this software is quite nice, and Apple's own system information, which you get via about this Mac software system report, that actually has got a column on there for which ones are 32-bit and 64, but it misses things. It only shows you the obvious stuff, not the non-obvious stuff. Go 64 digs deeper and finds more things. So it's a useful program. So I'll re-link to that as part of the article when I finish it, and just to point that out. So effectively, the article I'm trying to write is a summary of this discussion. Yeah, but I just haven't had a chance to finish it off yet. Any questions? If not, now I'll just stop sharing. So go back to remove spotlight. Carol, anything from you? Are you okay? You'll need to unmute. I can't hear you.
I've got enough to addle my brain. Thank you, David.
Righto. So anyway, there'll be an article writing this up as soon as I can get it done in the next couple of days, hopefully, and then get the magazine out. Yeah. Okay. With that, I suggest we say good night, as it's nearly 10 o'clock. And I won't try and do the Zoom, how to run a Zoom meeting, because that's unless I can squeeze it in 2 minutes.
You can read the magazine from last month.
Yeah. Haven't heard, quote unquote. The rumors keep flying around the place. There's a rumor that went out earlier in last week about somebody got some information saying that they had an evidence that it was an iMac with an Apple Silicon processor running, filing bug reports with their software. However, the evidence on that is shaky at best, because somebody else said, hang on, everything all my bug reports say they're from an iMac with an Apple Silicon processor, so I'm not sure that's real information. But there has been rumors floating around there's going to be a Apple product launch, which was supposed to be tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow for us, but there has not been an announcement about it. So there's a possibility Apple might start doing quiet product releases this week. More likely they're going to do some product releases in April, most likely including iPads, and possibly some auxiliary products. There are no clues yet about that, including Macs. All of the hints about upcoming Mac models are suggesting the third quarter of the year, which means from July to September is when the most likely time frame for the next round of Mac models to start appearing. If that's right, then Apple announcing some of them at the developer conference in June is a distinct possibility. So that's the most likely time frame, and we're sort of expecting to see a major redesign of the iMac, which, like the same sort of things I did with the MacBook Pro, shrink the bezels, get rid of the whole sort of chin under the monitor, simplify the whole appearance of the thing. The 27-inch iMac's already gone pure solid state with the 2020 model, so the new one will probably just change the outer design and switch to Apple Silicon. The MacBook Pros, the most likely scenario is there will be either a 13 or 14-inch. No, the entry-level 13. There were previously two 13-inch models. There's one with 2 Thunderbolt ports, the one with 4 Thunderbolt ports, which is more powerful. So what they've done is they've replaced the entry-level 2 Thunderbolt port model, but not the high-end one. So right now you can buy a entry-level M1 MacBook Pro or a high-end Intel MacBook Pro, but they've got rid of the Intel low-end one completely. So the likely next round of models will include the high-end 13-inch MacBook Pro, which may go to 14 inches if they change the screen, similar to what they did with the 16, the 16-inch Mac Pro and at least the 21.5-inch iMac, all of which have a similar level of functionality. And probably the high-end Mac Mini might go as far as 27-inch iMac, almost certainly not the Mac Pro yet, unless they do a simplified version. But then the other bit of news recently is that Apple has officially discontinued the iMac Pro, which only ever had one model and costs nearly $9,000 to buy the cheapest one. And that's just been finally gone for good. It's no longer exists. You can't even buy it. But they had a sort of a while stocks last, you can only buy the cheapest one, and then that was gone. So, but they're just basically cleaning things out in preparation for whatever comes next. So, yeah. So yeah, timing is basically I'm relying on rumors and I don't have any definite information. So it's a question of how accurate the rumor sources are. Yep. Okay. That's all for tonight. Thank you, folks. Good night, Carol.
Thank you, Graham. See you April 15th.
April 15th, April the 8th for the movie. Or no, you'll see me on April 15th, yes.
So I'll be in Napier on the 8th, unfortunately.
Right.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.